Everybody, I'm back again with a video for top games of 2023. Now, if you listen to our podcast, Punchboard Paradise, you'll have already heard my top 10 games of the year. But today I want to throw it in video. Not everybody listens, is able to listen to the podcast, or maybe you like it better in a video form. But I'm going to do one better. I'm going to do my top not even 20. I'm going to do my top 21 games of 2023. So when I figured it all out, said and done, I think I played around 34, 35 games in 2023, which is maybe a little bit below average of what I used to play for new games. I think as I'm growing as kind of a gamer, maybe sometimes some of the new stuff I'm not quite as concerned about. A lot of it, just happens to be, hey, somebody said, hey, I've got this game, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to try it. But maybe not necessarily me going out and buying all those games like I maybe did earlier in my gaming career. So, but still, I feel like it's a good swath of games. And like I said, I think I'm going to throw out my top 21 games of 2023. I think all of these games, I would play all these games again. Every one of these that I put on the top 21. I would play these games again, maybe some with, it'd have to be the right circumstances, and we'll talk about those when we get there. So, first of all, if you don't know who I am, my name is Clef. I am part of three guys. We do a podcast called Punchboard Paradise, and we've been doing it for over 5 years now. And, and so you can go back and hear my lists of past, and soon coming up on my next videos, and then in the podcast, we're going to be doing our top 100. I'm going to do my top 100 of all time on videos. And then we're going to be we're going to be doing on the podcast, we'll be doing our top 20, 25, something like that, which will also include what we refer to as our Punch Bunch. There, okay. Punch Bunch, we're going to have their top 25 too. So it's always kind of a fun time of year to do that. But right now, without further ado, I've talked a whole bunch. Let's get into our top 2023 games. So I'm going to start out with number 21. This game I got to play only one time, and it was a game that I was like, I have no interest in this game. It does not look like my type of game. Huge minis, crazy looking board. Everything about it was like, I don't like the looks of this. But I was at a con, Dome, which is Dad's on a Map. I was down there for a con. And a guy, Herb, said to me, hey, I got a new game. I'd like to play it. And I was like, okay. And then we get to the table, and he's like, oh, by the way, I don't know how to play. And I was like, oh. So I had to read it straight from the rule book, which is fine. I don't mind sometimes doing that. And anyways, the game is called Nightmare Cathedral. And we started to, read the rule book and go through it. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested. It doesn't seem terrible. The coolest part about this game was the first part of the game, you are doing certain things to try to score points, and you're, doing your thing or whatever. And then there's going to be something that happens, and I'm going to be honest, I can't remember what this was called or what, but something happens, and then you then start doing different things to try to score points and try to kind of do things where you're controlling these different, I don't know, I'm just going to call them bad guys, I don't know, but they were doing different things. But I liked the fact that there was like a beginning part of the game, and then it almost shifted into a different game. And I thought it was cool. I'm not going to seek out another play of this game, but if somebody said, hey, I'd really like to play this game again, I would be, I wouldn't say no. I would play it. So going to throw it in as my number 21, and that is going to be Nightmare Cathedral. All right, for my number 20, also only got to play this one time. And if anybody out there has ever played Acquire, it's kind of you're putting these tiles out on the board, and the big tiles will swallow up the small tiles, and it's kind of a stock type of a game. Old game, old Sid Saxon game, from back in the 60s. But this game is kind of a new take on Acquire, and it's called Dawn of Ulas. So that's ULOS. So Dawn of Ulas. And this is Acquire, where in the fact where you're having bigger things take over small things. However, you have cards that you can play to kind of manipulate it. Where in Acquire, it's just like, okay, it happened. It's done. Where in this, you do have cards that you can play and different things. And obviously, it's got a goblin type of theme to it or whatever. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of cool. I like Acquire okay. Some people are like, oh, Acquire is amazing. I'm like, it's okay. But I liked this, and I would like to give it this one. I honestly would say I would like to give it another try. I would like to. I got a friend of mine here who played it, Jake, who has it, and I'm like, I'd like to get it back to the table and give it another shot. So number 20 is Dawn of Ulyss. My number 19, big Euro game that came out this year. In fact, I had the whole deluxe copy of it, which was cooler than all can be. And that is Darwin's Journey. Fantastic, huge, Euro-y game. Has some cool things in it. When you go and you put your person out into a worker placement spot, you've got to have certain seals that they have to be able to place out into that worker placement spot. That's kind of a cool thing. I mean, I liked kind of where it was going. Had a little bit of a, if you've ever played Argent, the Consortium, where you put a guy out and they do have different abilities. This one, not as much of different abilities, but the better they are, the more seals they have, the better actions that they can take and the better things that you get. It has a really cool theme on, it's Darwin trying to find different species and then you're trying to take them to museums. Really, really, really good Euro game. If anybody knows me from, 3, 4, 5 years ago, this one would have easily been in probably my top 3 games because Euros were all the rage for me. And I still enjoy them. It just, now it's not maybe as big. And I liked it. Ended up selling it just because I played it probably 5, 6, 7 times, somewhere in that range. Enjoyed all my plays. Just felt like I'd probably gotten everything out of it that I want to get out. Now, I will say this. If you've ever just played the base game of Darwin's Journey, there is an expansion that comes with it that has these time things where you get to, when you go over things, you pull these cards and you can choose time to, do different actions. I liked it a lot more with that part of the game. So just so you know, the base game might even be a little bit lower, but that at least bumps it up a little bit. So, okay. So that was my number 19, Darwin's Journey. My number 18, and I know this was my podcast mate Richie's favorite game of the year. For me, that's going to come in at number 18. Got to look at my list here. 18, Station Fall. I like Station Fall. It's enjoyable. I don't know if it's a game that I'm like, hey, let's get together and let's play Station Fall. If people are somewhere and they're like, hey, let's do this, I'd still be like, yeah, let's play it. But let's be honest, it is just complete and utter chaos. It is a game of you try to make a plan to do this, and then somebody will move your thing here and then throw your monkey out the window airlock. I don't know. Is it fun? Absolutely. I had a great time, and I've played it 3 or 4 times now, and I've had a good time with it. But for me, I don't know. It doesn't jump out at me enough to be like, oh my God, I really, really love this game. Still top games of my year, so I enjoy it. One thing I definitely will never do, don't have any desire to ever do the setup or the teardown. It looks like an absolute nightmare. At least every time I've gotten to play it, it's a good friend of mine, Joe, always has it set up, and then he takes care of it. In fact, he's like, don't even touch anything because he wants to put it back in a certain order, which is great. And that's pretty much the only way I think I would play it again if he had it set up and ready to go. So anyways, that is number 18, Station Fall. All right, number 17, here's the first game that I still own, well, it's kind of funny, is going to be good old Tricky Time Crisis. As you can probably guess, it is a trick taker, so it's Tricky Time Crisis. This is a really fun do not follow game where you cannot follow one of the other suits, and there's going to be some hero suits, and then there's always one Dr. Tricky Time Crisis who is kind of like the bad guy. And what you'll always do is you'll always add up the hero's total power versus Dr. Tricky Time Crisis's total power. And then whoever wins between those, then there's certain things where you're going to be taking cards from the trick. And when you take those cards, you're putting them in your display area. Well, you don't want to have multiples of, say, like the yellow, because if you have only one yellow, and let's say it's worth 10 points, you get a second yellow, now they're each only worth 2 points each. So you're really looking to try to just have one of each color. And like the Dr. Tricky Time Crisis, those can be like 30 points or higher. So you really want just one of those. And so you want to avoid trying to take more of those. That's really the thing of it. It's a fun little game. I really have enjoyed my plays of it. Would play this anytime. If somebody said, hey, let's play a little Tricky Time Crisis, I'm definitely in. So that's going to be my number 17 Tricky Time Crisis. So now, number 16. We just talked a minute ago about A Station Fall and talk about a chaotic game. It doesn't have anything on this next game, which I got to play one time, and I got to play with my other podcast mate, can't speak today, Chad. He brought it over, and then I got to play with one of my good friends from LA, Tim, and then another guy, Brian. We got to all play this game, and that is Thunder Road Vendetta. Talk about chaos. You could call this a race game, but I would call it more of try to blow your opponent up as much as possible game. It is chaotic, crazy, but I had one of the most fun times I've ever had just kind of playing a game. It was just really fun and enjoyable, just not a thought process in the world. You're just, okay, I'll do this, and let's see what happens. Oh, I blew myself up, or I got you, total fun, just blast. I think the version that Chad had was a very blinged out Kickstarter one that had cars, and we had special powers and different stuff. But it was an absolute blast. Just had a fun time. It would be one of those games where there'd be certain people that I'd be like, yeah, let's play it. And then other people I'd be like, no, you got to be in the spirit. So it's specialized in that sense. But anyways, so that was my number 16, Thunder Road Vendetta. All right, moving into my number 15. And boy, I don't think I'd ever tell anybody that I'd ever have this name on one of my top games of the year list. But for what it was, I enjoyed this game. And that is going to be Terraforming Mars, the dice game. So I know that obviously there's the regular big box Terraforming Mars. And if you don't know me, not a big Terraforming Mars fan. Then came Terraforming Mars, the card game. Didn't really care for it all that much. It tried to kind of be a little bit of a race for the galaxy. Didn't work for me. Didn't really enjoy that one all that much. So this is kind of like its third version, which, big games here nowadays, they get a card game and a dice game, and this one got this one, and I enjoyed this. I've played it 3 times. Probably 3 times is plenty. I don't need to play it again, but if somebody was like, let's play it, I would be able to play it. But this one, you still have different cards. There's a small board. The board doesn't really make a big difference. This is a total solitary game. You're not, I could care less almost what anybody else is doing. There's a couple of different milestones you might try to race for, but for the most part, you are rolling dice that have the different symbols on them, and then you're trying to play cards to your tableau, and then you have cards that you'll play that then will let you get extra dice when you go to do, I can't remember what the name of it is, kind of the recharge phase where you'll recharge and get new dice and stuff like that. It's, comparatively, fairly quick. You can knock out a 3 or 4 player game probably in about 45 minutes to an hour if everybody's kind of on top of it. Not, like I said, there's no interaction. Don't expect it. But if you like a game where you're kind of figuring out your own puzzle and doing your own thing and like rolling dice, this one, pretty darn good one. So that's going to be my number 15, Terraforming Mars, the dice game. All right, my next one is going to be one that I was super duper excited for this year. And that is going to be My Island. Now, this is a new version of an original game that came out a couple years ago, which was called My City. Both of these are by the great Reiner Knizia. And at the time I played My City, absolutely my number one legacy type of game. It's one you start off and you're placing these polyominoes all over the board, and then there's different ways to score points, but then at the end of the round you're covering things up with stickers and doing different things on your board, and absolutely loved it. My wife and I played through the whole scenario. We loved it. We still play. Actually, they have now you finish a campaign, you can play on just, this is how you play for when you're done. We've played it probably 3 or 4 times on just a regular thing. So we were both really excited when My Island came out. And it's great. It is absolutely great. I don't know what it is that just has not made it as quite enjoyable as the old one. Now, instead of polyominoes, you have hexes that have different shapes in them. And you're having a little island that you're taking care of. And a lot of it is very similar. And I think maybe that's, it's funny because if you would ask me, do you want something similar to My City again? I've been like, yeah, I loved it. But then I almost feel like it was too the same. And I didn't have enough differences to make it feel enough different. I still enjoy it. We're probably 3/4 of the way done with it. We'll still finish it. I still like it. But something didn't just jump out at me as much as My City. So anyways, that's my number 14, My Island. All right, my next one is going to be my number 13. And I feel like this one definitely could climb. But at this moment, it's going to be down here because I've only gotten to play it, I would say maybe 2.5 times, maybe would be the best way to put it. And that is going to be from GMT, Border Reivers. All right. This takes place in, I would guess, probably the 1500s. Yeah, the 1500s. And this is kind of English. You have different English factions, and then we have some different Scottish factions. And the funny thing is you're going to win this game with victory points. You know how you're going to get victory points? At the end of the game, having horses, cattle, and sheep. Those are the way you score points at the end of the game. So you're doing kind of, as it kind of says, reaving, you're kind of going and raiding other areas and trying to steal their sheep. But you're also going to battle sometimes with like England versus Scotland. You'll do different battles and you can score points that way. But the other way you're scoring points is notoriety. So like how famous you are of a clan that is going and doing these things, and I don't know, kind of, I guess, being bad because you're going and stealing people's sheep and stuff like that. But anyways, cool. It has a really cool card play where you're doing some drafting in the first round, at the beginning of the round, and then you go into doing these battles. It's a big dice roll fest after that where you're just trying to roll dice and trying to hits. First time I ever played it, oh my God, I rolled so bad with dice. It was just ridiculous. I mean, I finished so far in last place, it wasn't even funny. But I feel like this one will climb more plays I get of it. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's going to be my number 13, Border Reivers. So my number 12 game is another Euro, probably another really one of the bigger other Euros that came out this year, and that is going to be good old Nucleum. All right, solid game. You're talking, if you like Euro games, this is a great Euro game. It is everything that I would like out of most Euros. It doesn't have great interaction in the fact of you can certainly get to areas first or take spots away from people, but there's not going to be any, I'm going to destroy your uranium plant, or for that matter, there is no, I'm going to steal your uranium. Like if you're talking, a lot of people say this is a mixture between brass, kind of barrage, a little Great Western Trail, a little Concordia. Like there's throwing in all these great Euro type of games. And I would agree with that. All the mechanics are solid. It's great. I like everything about it. It's a great puzzle. But there's no, like brass, the interaction in brass is what makes brass up here of a Euro as opposed to maybe down here, which for this one. And same thing with barrage. Barrage's interaction is way up here. And I think I missed that a little bit on the interaction. Not to say there's not interaction, because you can get to spots first and you can build your rails and stuff in places where people maybe were trying to get to. But once you build your uranium, it's yours. You don't ever have to worry about somebody taking it or anything like that. There is coal that you can buy when it's cheaper earlier. It gets more expensive as the game goes along, but usually as the game goes along, you start to use your uranium anyway, so it doesn't make a big difference. I like it. I've played this game now, I think 6, maybe 7 times, and I really, really like this game. But it just, after those plays, I was like, okay, I get it. I don't know if there's anything more to explore here. If somebody wanted to play it or me teach it to them, I'd be like, no problem. I'm up for it. I'll teach it. But I think it's past the point of me saying, hey, I'm ready to teach this, or I want to make people play this. It's just one of those now. I feel like this one I'm going to keep in my collection. I don't think I'm going to get rid of it because I do think it's a really good Euro game. but I don't know if it's gonna. It's definitely not in the top tier of Euro games for me. You know, the Great Westerns, Barrages, you know, those those type of ones. Brass. Yeah. Okay. So number 12, Nuculum. All right. For my number 11. Once again, I've only gotten 2 plays of this game in, and it needs to be played more. Yes, it does, and I feel like, once again, it can go. Look at this small little thing right here. That is Robotech Reconstruction. It's kind of a mini coin game. If you're familiar with coin games, you have 4 different factions, and they each have a different win condition to win the game, and that is what's going on with this game. I'm not a huge fan of the IP. I don't know it. I didn't watch Robotech, so I don't know anything about it. So that part, if you're a big Robotech fan, I think that would really increase this game. For me, it's not. You know, I'd rather see some sort of a, you know, Caesar type of, you know, theme on it or whatever. But for what it was, as a kind of a, once again, you have 4 different factions and you are trying different things to win. And I like how they did it. And I feel like it was very balanced on what you were doing. I need to play this some more because I would really like to explore a little bit more of it. But the plays I've played puts it up there. So it just missed out on my top 10. That's going to be my number 11. And that's going to be Robotech Reconstruction. All right. So now moving into the top 10. And I'll tell you, so if you've listened to the podcast, you already know my top 10. So none of this will be a surprise. If you haven't listened to the podcast, then you'll see the surprise. But I can talk about some more things. After I've done this, even now I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know what? I definitely would switch some things up from when I did to the podcast, just kind of thinking about things. But I'm going to keep it the same, and I'll tell you where I would maybe switch a couple things. And I think these next 2 games, 100% would be switched for sure after thinking about it. But we'll talk about what my number 10 is, and that's going to be 2040, An American Insurgency. So this is from Compass Games. 2-player only. Awesome, cool game. One of you plays as kind of the government, and one kind of plays as the rebels. Now, a lot of people, when they think of that, they kind of think, oh, this is kind of, you know, the U.S. government versus, I don't know, you know, like, I don't want to say, but really, honestly, rebels could be either side, and the government could be either side of a political spectrum in America, I guess is what I should say. And that's one thing that I think is really cool on how they did this game. When I first started playing this game, there are a lot of dice rolling that you do. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that much dice rolling when it comes to game. But it works really, really, really well in this game. So if you're interested at all in, if you like Twilight Struggle, if you like, you know, Labyrinth, if you like any of those 2-player kind of card-driven card games, check this one out. It is definitely worth it. I really enjoy it. And honestly, looking at my list, this one should be a little bit higher up on my list. Probably should beat out at least this next game for sure that I'm going to talk about. Maybe some more. But who cares? At this moment, still top 10, 2040, American Insurgency. Okay, so my number 9, like I said, probably should be my number 10, maybe even 11. I don't know. I liked this game, but the more I keep thinking of it, the more I keep thinking, I liked it, but boy, do I wish there was something more to it. And that is Hegemony. It had some really cool ideas where you play, and probably should play it as a 4-player game, where one player plays the workers, one player plays the capitalists, one player plays the middle class, and one player plays the government. And where it had some really neat ideas, I don't know if the interaction that I would want in a game was there. It didn't really feel to me enough of what I would want of really making the interaction something more. No, you know, there really wasn't a lot of negotiation. There wasn't a lot of things. I mean, yeah, you could talk about the different bills that you would then say, oh, okay, I want to pass, you know, this should be passed, this should not be. So I'm not saying there wasn't interaction. I don't think the interaction that I wanted from that type of game was there. I really would, and I always said, I really like to see a game out there where you have 4 different factions and each of you has like a coin game, but more in a Euro-y form. Like somehow where you've got the people who are producing the goods, you got the people buying the goods, going to work, and you've got the companies from overseas, like have these different factions, but somehow have more interaction. Like, you know what? I'm not buying any of your goods today, so, okay, well, tomorrow making the goods go to something on those lines. Okay, anyways, that's not what this video is about. So I liked it. I enjoyed it. But I don't know. This might be the one game that I'm like, it would be hard pressed for somebody to say, hey, let's play this game, and me to be like, all right, I'll play it. I think most of these other games on this list, I would rather play over it. So anyways, that's my number 9, Hegemony. All right. Number 8 is a little small box game, and this is from All Play Games. And I remember when I first saw this game, I looked at it and I was like, oh boy, I don't know. What am I playing here? And then I got done playing it, and amazing little game, and that is Big Top. Okay, like I said, this is from All Play Games. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is kind of a reprint of an older game that they've redone, which is great by me because obviously I don't know the older game. In Big Top, you are running a 3-ring circus, and you're trying to get different people to come to perform in your 3-ring circus, aka you're trying to get victory points to come into yours and have the most victory points at the end of the game. However, you have to have some star power. And so some of the cards that you get, you need to have stars on there before you can win the game. If you don't get a card that has stars on it, you have no chance at winning the game. You are not eligible, which is kind of a cool thing. And then it's an auction game. Now, it's not a typical auction game where it's like, all right, I'll bid 4, you bid 5. So you are bidding, and you do have numbers that and so whoever does bid the highest gets the card. But whenever you bid, you're going to have these circles on your cards. And when you bid, you're like a 6, let's say, you're going to cover up every 6 that you have on different cards in your tableau, including you'll also cover up a 6 on the card that is currently being bid for. And then whoever wins it, let's say somebody else is the auctioneer and I win it, I pay them the money. Then they have that money to go with. But if I'm the auctioneer and I win it, that money goes out of the game. And what I really find fun in this game is sometimes, nobody who's auctioneer wins their own bid, and so there's lots of money in the game. But sometimes it's like, oh my God, we just went 6 cards in a row where only the auctioneer won their own card, and then all of a sudden all the money is gone. And you're like looking at 10s and 11s, and you're like, I got $4 sitting in front of me, $3. What? I'm never going to be able to get there. Really cool game. Like it a lot. If you like auction games, definitely try out Big Top. All right, my number 7 is going to be another GMT game, and this one I've gotten to play a couple of times, and once again, this could climb, and it could go down. It's hard to say sometimes with some of these that I've only played a couple of times, but this one is from GMT Games, and this one is Prime Minister. So I don't want to go too much into detail about how this game plays, but each player will play a different role in the British government. You're going to have somebody who's a prime minister, somebody backs them. You're going to have an opposition leader and somebody who backs the opposition leader. And you are doing different actions of trying to get supporters and trying to maybe make a bill pass or maybe make it not pass, have different events that you go through. You have different things that are happening. And all of these are going to cause somebody to score some victory points. To start the game off with, there's a pact where everybody's working together. So all the victory points you start with in the game are tracked on one control marker, which is the prime minister's one, but that's everybody's points. But then at some point, the opposition leader can break off, and then the opposition leader and the person backing him, they'll score points differently than the prime minister and the person backing them, and you'll continue on. But then eventually there's going to be elections, and whoever has the most votes in the election will if the prime minister has enough votes, they'll retain prime minister. But if the opposition leader has the most, then they will then switch and they'll become the prime minister. And so the prime minister kind of moves around. Well, the way you win this game is pretty simple. Be at 100 points and be prime minister. Period. You could be at 100 points, and if you never have the ability to take back over the Prime Minister, you cannot win this game. Somebody could be at 50 points, work their way up to 100, and then boom, they've got Prime Minister and they win, and you could have been at 100 points forever. Really unique, interesting. Like I said, I feel like I need to play it a little bit more to make it a full on what I would kind of rate it and put it at. But as of right now, it's going to come in as my number 7 game, Prime Minister. Okay, my number 6. And as you can see now, as we're starting to get in the top 10, most of these games I own. So, my number 6 is once again from GMT Games. If you don't know me, I'm a big GMT fan now. I like a lot of GMT games. And this one's going to be the new 3-player coin game that came out from GMT this year. And that's going to be People Power. So this is set in the Philippines in the 80s. And as far as a 3-player coin game, they really did a great job with this game. I love it a lot. For those of you who haven't seen some of my other videos, I just did one on the coin rankings, and I had this one above. I would say maybe it's a little bit lower on my coin games because I usually like my coin games, my 4-player ones, and the theme in this one really doesn't do a lot for me. But as far as a 3-player game, it is really good. I think it's actually, for me, I like it a little bit better than All Bridges Burning, which is the other 3-player coin game. I don't know. But it's still really good. But for me, number 6 for the year, People Power. All right, now, my number 5 game of the year. This is a big, big, big game. And this is from another company that I absolutely love all their games. And I just did a video on my top Splatter games. So my number 5, Horseless Carriage. So the big Splatter release. Really, this is the big Splatter release since Food Chain's been the last one before this one. And I like this game a lot. I really like trying to get your factory together with, you got to put these different tiles, and they're different size tiles, and you got to put them in there to keep your engines going, to make, get these, buy these cars, or it's not buy them, but, produce these cars. And then you go out into a selling thing where you're going to sell all these cars. And I feel like in a way, maybe I haven't quite figured this one out enough to say what's not quite clicking 100% with me. I like it a lot, and it's still going to be one of my top games. I'd play it at any time. But I think that I think anytime with Splatters, there's a level of time you need to play them before finally you're like, aha, I see it. And I feel like that's the case with this one, that eventually this one could move up in the rankings of 2023. It could climb in my Splatter rankings. But right now, I'm going to throw it in my number 5, Horseless Carriage. So my number 4, another GMT game. And this is the other coin game they released this year. And this one's technically not supposed to be part of the coin game series. You can see over here it has a little thing on it that says multi-pack. Because this is supposed to be one of the new series where there are 2 players. And there's 4 different maps with 4 different rule sets in the maps. I'm going to be honest, I've only played 3 out of the 4. Okay, still got the 4th one to play. Probably should do that here fairly quickly. But the other ones that I've played, amazing. By far, the best 2-player coin game that's out there. Really feels like a coin game. Really has that back and forth. They did a great job with the cards. One thing I really like is in the 2-player, you don't see what the next card is coming up. So it's not like you can be like, oh, well, I know I need a pass to get to that next event. You just got to hope. Sometimes you're like, well, I'm going to take this action, hope that next card is not something that really screws me. I really like that. This is a great one. My number 4 of the year, The British Way. So now we're down to the top 3. And these 3 are all great games. I really like them all. So they could be interchangeable, but really, I think where I have them is the right spot. I feel like years down the road, I think I'll probably still have these in this spot. We'll see, though. But for right now, my number 3, ooh, I got to reach way back here because this is a biggie. Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride. After all these games, yes, Ticket to Ride. The Legacy version. It's called Legends to the West. And if you are a Ticket to Ride fan, this game will probably do you quite well. If you don't like Ticket to Ride, this game's not going to do anything for you. I played this exclusively just as a 2-player game. It can play 2 to 5. I played it exclusively as a 2-player game with my wife, who really enjoys Ticket to Ride, and we had a great time doing it. Is there anything in this game that's going to blow you away and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't see that? No. It is Ticket to Ride, adding stuff in, but yet giving you enough sprinkles of stuff that keeps changing that really, really worked. And my wife and I both really enjoyed it. The campaign is 12 games long, and we probably knocked that out in probably about 5 weeks, I would guess. Maybe it's quicker than that. I don't even know. It wasn't a long time, about a month. We knocked those games out. We both really enjoyed it. I mean, quite honestly, I wished, when I got done, I wish there were some more modules because it was so much fun of how they did things, and I enjoyed the game. Once again, we have not yet done it, but I think like My City, we might go back, my wife and I, and actually just play the actual game now, base game that we created with it. I don't want to say much else. I don't want to have any spoilers for anybody. Not talking about the game itself. You know it's a legacy. Stuff's going to get added. But I feel like I would like to go back and actually play our finished map of what we did. Really liked it. Ticket to Ride, Legacy. So my next one came out of left field. Would not have even imagined I liked this game as much as I did. But this, and if it wasn't for my number one game of all time, this one would have easily been my number one. And in fact, almost every single person that I have taught this game to has been like, oh my God, this game is so good. And that is from good old Capstone Games. This is La Familia, the Great Mafia War. Now, I'm going to give its one negative right now. 4 players, not 3 players, and we can, do this and do this. Not 2 players, and I mean, technically, I guess you could play it as a 2-player game, but controlling both factions. But really, it's a 4-player game. It's a 2v2. So you have you and your you have a family, and then your teammate, basically, they have their family, and then your opponents both have 2 families, or have a family each, I should say. And in this game, it is, you're taking different actions to basically try to put more of your soldiers kind of out on Sicily, a map of Sicily. And it's an area control game of you're trying to control different areas. And if you get to a certain number with you and your teammate, you immediately can win. If not, if you get to the end of the game, into 4 rounds, and whoever has the most is the winner. But with it, not only are you doing different actions to try to bolster up your number of people out there, you can put out car bombs, you can put out drug labs, you can do these different things to do stuff out there. You have to take actions to put out orders. And on these orders are how you will go and attack other factions to try to take over, or maybe just want to just try to blow them up and try to get them out of there. And without you having that order there, it wouldn't matter if you had an army of 400 guys. You never have that many, but if you had a big old, let's say, 15 army there, it doesn't matter. You can't do anything with them if you don't put an order to then move them somewhere to do anything. So, which is honestly just such a cool thing. I really, really, really like this game. It also has where your different factions have different kind of abilities, or, where you're pulling different things off, and they all have different orders. So cool, so neat. If you like any type of area control game and like a little bit of there's a lot of interaction, I should say. This one, give it a try. La Familia, the Great Mafia War, Capstone Games. Absolutely love it. Okay, so for my final game, and I'm probably the only crazy person in the world that really, doesn't mean, when you say this game, to me, all the games are, they're the same game. They just have some modules that make them different. A lot of people are like, they're totally different games. They should be, like if you put a list together, they have to go into a different list. I don't feel that way. But for a year-end game, I'm going to say, hey, for the modules that they put into this game, it's amazing. And that's going to be Great Western Trail, New Zealand. Now, Great Western Trail, one of my top games of all time. I absolutely love Great Western Trail. I have played Great Western Trail, the base game, over 100 times easily. I have played, I never can remember, the Rails to the North or whatever it's called, the expansion, which I think at least people will call that one an expansion. That I've played it tons of times. Then you've got Argentina, played it a bunch, and then New Zealand, I've played them a bunch. And quite honestly, I love all the main mechanisms of Great Western Trail. The rondel, the stopping at the different neutral buildings, building your own buildings, deck building, kind of doing your hand. I love everything about those. And I just love the fact that he's done a great job, Mr. Good old Alexander Pfister, of putting out these new, what I would just call kind of variants. Yes, is it a standalone game? There's no question about it. You don't need any of the other Great Western Trails to play this one. But the games themselves are all very similar in how they play. They're just differences in how, like, the little extra things are differences in them. Once again, not a video I want to go into. I'm just saying for my year, this one is going to get a little bit of a bump because it does have one of my favorite games of all time in it. So that's why I'm going to put it at my number one for 2023. And that's going to be Great Western Trail, New Zealand. All right, so there we go. So there are my top games of 2023. I did my top 21 games of 2023. Let me know what you think. Do you think, there's some games that you're like, wait a minute, that should be way higher. There's some games you're like, you're crazy, that should be nowhere close. I'll be interested to hear. Go ahead and throw those in the comments. Let me know what your top 10 of the year is. And like I said, if you've enjoyed any of this and you're not a listener of Punchboard Paradise, please go ahead and give us a check out. We release episodes every month, and you can go to any of your local podcast things and type in Punchboard Paradise, and you will find us there. And and we also have, you can email us at punchboardparadise@gmail.com. We also have a webpage. You can go to Punchboard Paradise at punchboardparadise.com to check us out there. That's it. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Appreciate you watching. Bye.